Hello everyone, I'm Ogun. In this video, we will try to find the answer to why people prefer Apple iPhones instead of Android devices. First of all, did you know that Apple has sold 2.32 billion iPhones from 2007 to 2023? This number represents 29.41% of the current world population. At least 3 out of 10 smartphone users you see around you use an iPhone. There are numerous smartphone manufacturers using the Android operating system against iOS devices of iPhone. When a consumer wants to buy a smartphone with the Android operating system, they have numerous alternatives to choose from, while users naturally turn to Apple when they want to buy a smartphone with the iOS operating system. So, what is Apple's best at, and why are people so attached to the iPhone? Apple announces new iPhone models on certain dates every year. All of these devices with the iOS operating system, excluding the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus in the iPhone 14 series, are always coming with the world's best processor on the day they are produced and introduced. For example, every device in the iPhone 12 series uses the A14 Bionic processor. At the time of the introduction of the iPhone 12, the A14 Bionic processor was the most powerful phone processor of the period. Apple never changes its iPhone sales strategy in this regard. Even in the iPhone SE models that it claims to produce in terms of price performance, it always used and uses the most powerful phone processors of its time. People are sure that the iPhone 15 series, expected to be introduced and produced in 2023, will also have the world's most powerful phone processors. The fact that iPhones are extremely stable and will not lose their performance even after years is actually explaining to us why people prefer iPhones. For example, the Geekbench single-core processor score of the Samsung S23 Ultra, introduced in February, is lower than the single-core performance of the A14 Bionic processors of the iPhone 12 series that Apple launched in 2020. Moreover, the Samsung S23 Ultra is probably the best Android device for many people. Apple, which never changes its attitude and quality in terms of mobile processors, is trying to put the world's best phone processor into every new iPhone phone, taking its marketing preferences into account. As an Apple user, I know that if I want, my purchased phone will serve me well for at least 3 to 5 years under normal conditions. However, Ogun, we understand that Apple produces phones that are always trying to be better each year by using the world's best smartphone processors. We must also mention that Android devices, for example, have very high quality and extremely performance processors such as Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. What does the A16 Bionic processor used in Apple's iPhone 14 Pro Max do better than Snapdragon 8 Gen 2? To answer this question, if we have to say, what Apple does better than Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is the performance in Geekbench. Many of our friends can say that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor is much better than A16 Bionic and even 32% more performance according to Antutu Benchmark 9. However, I do not agree with this and want to explain it to you. Antutu applies a different scoring system for iPhones and Android devices. While there are countless phone models that use Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 and are tested with Antutu Benchmark 9, there are only 2 phone models that use A16 Bionic and are tested, which are 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. Both of them have iOS operating system and the same interface. However, on the Android side, you can find many phone models with Android operating system but with customized interfaces such as Color OS, MyUI, or One UI. Antutu Benchmark does not compare Android devices with iOS devices. While Android devices are scored within their own category, iOS devices are also scored within their own category. You can see the performance difference between iPhone 14 Pro Max and iPhone 14 Pro by looking at Antutu Benchmark, but unfortunately, you cannot understand the performance difference between any iPhone and any Android device by looking at Antutu Benchmark. If you want to see the performance difference between 2 phones and which one is better, you should look at Geekbench. If we look at the Geekbench 5 benchmark results, we can see that A16 Bionic is 23% better in single-core performance and 10% better in multi-core performance than Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Actually, everything I have explained about mobile processors and comparing their performance must have given you an idea. As an iPhone user and someone who tries to compare two devices with each other in a fair way to reveal the best one, I know that Apple always does much better and offers much more stable performance than the processors Android has, while having much better processors. So, oh gun, is it all about the processor that ensures a long and stable life for the phone? Isn't the camera of my phone also important? What does Apple think about battery performance, and why does Apple not seem confident about battery performance? What ensures a long and stable life for a phone is largely the processor performance and quality, but other hardware components like memory are also very important. However, there are many people who may have a phone with an average performing processor, but want a camera that performs incredibly well. Furthermore, these people may not have the budget to purchase an iPhone or a flagship Android device. In such situations, the best thing to do is to look at the results of camera tests provided by DxOMark. The iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is currently the best iPhone available, is ranked 6th in the world in terms of phone cameras. According to our source, DxOMark, as you can see in our first video, the Honor Magic 5 Pro has the best phone camera in the world, meaning that the iPhone is not the best in terms of camera quality but is still very impressive and powerful in terms of processing power. When you purchase an iPhone, you know that you are getting a very impressive phone camera when compared to all other phones produced globally. When you want to purchase any Android model phone, you usually want to access all information about it and check its performance, but this is not the case for the iPhone. When Apple releases a new phone, most people know that it is probably one of the best phones in the world. Therefore, brand recognition and reliability is actually Apple's forte, achieved by producing extremely high-quality products. Can you tell us why expensive phones tend to have stingy batteries? In fact, Apple is not stingy with their batteries. If you look at an average Android phone, you'll see that most smartphones today have a battery of around 4,000 to 5,000 mAh. But when you look at video playback times or idle usage values, you'll see that they don't provide as much screen time as any iPhone. Apple keeps the battery of their phones relatively small on paper, but the operating system's extreme stability contributes incredibly to screen time, allowing you to use the phone comfortably. As an iPhone 12 mini user, I can personally attest to getting at least 6 hours of screen time per day, and my phone only has a 2,227 mAh battery. Can you get 6 hours of screen time with a 2,227 mAh battery on any device with an Android operating system and any processor you want? That's what Apple means. Thank you for listening to me, and see you in the next video.